Nadia was supposed to start this talk. She's actually my wife, who's also doing a part-time PhD on health and safety law, and she's over at the commercial law department. She's a PTM there, and her part-time research was on health and safety law in this country and how it works and all that. Unfortunately, her health and safety. So we had this. Oh, I wasn't supposed to give the reason. No, okay. Anyway, so she's not well today. Okay. So she sends her apologies.
No, I just wanted you is not well today.
So is she the safety and you're the common sense? Is that?
No, she is safety and common sense.
All right. Yeah. But I was wondering.
As Kelly rightly put, I'm the sidekick. So I think so she really sends her apology. She was looking forward to discussing today, and but maybe another time there'll be an opportunity again. It's quite interesting what she talks about, because the law has changed recently, and then that's affected a lot of things for us. So I think it's good to know what the law actually is. So my bit is really a sort of a supporting bit, and it's really a discussion piece. And I thought I'd put this sort of provocative title, Safety First, Common Sense Second, simply because there's so much sort of conflicting views about what is safety, and I thought that it's a good way to start a discussion on it. So, definitions. Common sense. What is common sense? Common sense, if we ignore all this modifier, noun, blah, 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 is good sense and sound judgment in practical matters. It is all a matter of common sense. That's a phrase we sometimes use.
So this is from Oxford Dictionary or Cambridge?
This is from Internet Dictionary. When you key in common sense, it comes out like this, and you cut and paste. But I think it's wider. But I think in general, it's just something common. But the question we should really ask is, how common is common sense? Do we share the same sense? How sensible then is also common sense? Who validates that? So I think common sense alone, just having this idea that, oh, we use common sense, is inadequate. And the two issues here, so safety first here, I put as safety protocols, and then we have common sense. And really, how do these two go together? Do they go together? Do they overlap? Is one a subset of the other? These are the things that this discussion is all about. So when I use the term common sense, I don't mean, so it's not a disrespect that this person does not have common sense. That means he's stupid. No, it's not that. Common sense here refers to things like experience, instinct, intuition. So things that we have that may be deemed as common given your background, where you come from, your life experience. And especially with the discussion that's going to follow, I think we must be respectful for what we use as common sense, and you'll see why soon. Okay, this is a guy working at a lathe. I don't know if you can see. Or mill. Milling machine.
Thank you. Not a guy working at a lathe.
Okay, a guy working at a machine.
Identify machine.
Yes, yes. Good point. So
Good common sense.
He's got his safety glasses on, yeah, and he's working on it. Okay, that's fine. He's holding, using his. That's fine. A scenario. He seems comfortable. He seems happy. This is from a site, a Japanese manufacturer site. Now this is probably a lathe, right? Yeah. And she's got a hat on and all that. Looks pretty cool. Now, anybody know who this person is? Michelle. Okay, so here's where I guess the respect and all that comes out, because she died. Okay, she was a Yale student killed as hair got caught in lathe. There's a famous case, and an extremely capable student. She, engineering background, and so I looked up a little bit of, as the internet helps. Oh wait, okay. So she got killed by a lathe machine, and you see this person having a hair tied back, and seems quite safe. And then I looked up Michelle Dufault, and this is a picture of her in this zero gravity situation. She's got her hair tied back, and then you look up the way she died. She was strangled by her hair. So, you know, you sort of start to put two and two together to try and picture what could have happened, and then this scenario came up. When you go and use a machine like that, you look closely, you try and work it out. Eventually, the investigation said that the machine was an older machine that didn't have some of the safety precautions of the newer machine, but still, they said that they still couldn't say that it was a preventable accident. So the reality of using this piece of equipment is such that, yeah, sure, you have to go through, and you can follow the safety precautions. You tie your hair, but is that safe enough? So something to bear in mind for our discussion. Next, liquid nitrogen. You all know what it is. And, you know, and nowadays, this is a chef's outfit, so it's being used a lot in daily life.
Yeah.
Used in cooking, okay? This is, you know, fancy foods and all that, they use liquid nitrogen a lot. What's that? Molecular gastronomy, yes. And then even drinks. Now, another tragic case. I don't know whether you've heard of this. So he was a seasoned employee, a senior researcher. He wasn't a PhD student or something. He was in fact in charge of some protocol supervision labs. And what happened was, he was working alone, and then he went to get some liquid nitrogen, and there was a spill, and the liquid nitrogen was in a contained room, and the ventilation system for that day wasn't working. He looked in there, he saw the accident, he went in, and he got asphyxiated because of the removal of displacement of the oxygen, and he died. So this was interesting for many reasons to me, because also Imperial College was fined £70,000 for it, which I thought is a pittance. It's a huge billion-dollar industry. Place. But when you read the court documents, you realize that there are a lot of things that come to balance about the remorse the university feels, about the work that the university is doing, what is deemed as profit, what is deemed as money put to goodwill for further research, about how the parents felt about the situation as well, knowing that it is to, you know, as they say, happens, you know. So things will happen. So following protocols may not solve the day, they'll solve the problem. Common sense also may not solve the problem, even if you have common sense. You know, it's a tricky situation, recognizing that accidents can happen no matter what. So coming back to this scenario, I think we want to build a sphere of knowledge that involves both protocols and common sense. I think it's a combination, it's not exclusive. And here's where I think we can have some direction for ourselves. We can have a situation where there is common sense, and then we have all these safety protocols, or we can have a second scenario where the safety protocols may not be adequate compared to the wealth of experience and knowledge that one has. And really, the direction towards positive lab safety culture is, if we have this situation, it's important to express some sense of humility, recognizing that the safety protocols are there to help us. And then cooperation, of course. So you know, if we are in this sphere and we don't recognize that this is really there to help, then we put ourselves in great danger. And then there's a situation where maybe you find that safety protocols is inadequate. You know more about something. That's where initiative and leadership comes in. You come up with the, you see something that maybe can be improved, campaign for it, fight for it, but in a constructive manner that leads to better knowledge. So I think recognizing these two scenarios is important, and what we feel about a certain safety situation is important for us to deal with, you know, getting this idea where it's all integrated. So this is just a overview of some ideas.
I think everyone would agree. Actually, if you go back to the previous slide, I was just going to comment, both of these situations are examples of where you're learning. It should all be continuous learning, continuous improvement. In both situations, where the person that's operating the equipment, they might be in the situation where they're not an experienced operator. They might be more on the left-hand side of things. But, so they're learning from the procedures and equipment and other people around them, etc.
Exactly.
Yes, but similarly, there's a learning educational aspect to the right-hand figure as well. So I think the learning educational aspect of it is really important as well.
Yes, yes. That openness to
yes,
that,
that's right. So couldn't agree more.
The thing you guys need to remember when you're doing this is, although the safety protocols are there, common sense is there. If you have safety protocols, you must ensure that the students are aware of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And that's part of the education.
that's basically part of the thing. You must document that it is there, that they have been shown that stuff.
Yes.
So in the incident where we had a young lady upstairs that was playing with liquid nitrogen, we have safety protocols for handling liquid nitrogen, but she had not been shown them.
Yeah, so the education didn't happen.
So the education didn't happen. Okay.
But what are those things first? Could they be up on the wall?
They're actually in my labs. They're in a folder, actually sitting in the folder, or there are all safe methods of use. And for you guys, when you're dealing with the students are dealing with chemicals, there is a safety protocol for handling class 4 chemicals, handling class 3, which is flammable chemicals, class 4 is flammable solids. Each of those has got a thing where that gives you the basic points that you need to be aware of. And then at that point, you guys can then say, but in this case, it's not going to apply. These are the things you need to be aware of when handling flammable solvents, but in this case, you don't have to worry about it because it's acetic acid, and the flammable possibilities of burning acetic acid is 200 or 300 degrees. You're not going to get that high. But you need to basically have that little bit of that talk with them about it and say, this is what you need to know. But in reality, you don't need to know that much at the present moment. You have to sort of cover yourself.
But you're right. Actually, some stuff could be on the wall as well.
Yeah, some stuff should be on the wall.
It should be. Yeah, especially stuff that's
So they
everyone
basically
needs to
have
know.
to see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, like Imperial College, I think actually had a really great lab induction process. It was like 3 days in front of your computer, reading about everything from like how to sexually harass people to not getting
How to
trapped in
sexually
I mean, no, it was everything to do
That's very
with
British.
safety, getting stuck in the toilets after hours, everything, and things you weren't going to encounter in your work. Like cryogens. Cryogens were listed, so you may never handle a cryogen, but unless you heard the word cryogen, you wouldn't know necessarily that there's safety considerations to be had about that. And so I think maybe honestly having an online induction to complement the building induction, something where you actually come in contact with all the hazards in the building, so that when you're actually in the lab and you see someone pouring liquid nitrogen, you think, oh wait, I should know more about that. Because otherwise, how do you know? Like, you just, it's pouring liquid, right? We all know how to pour
Is
liquid.
that something that's a concern for here when, you know, the air phone's not working?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
It is, yeah. So that's something we've never thought about, because until the air conditioning goes out and we're playing with liquid nitrogen, you think, oh, okay.
Because a lot of the labs don't have windows.
Yeah.
No, it was bordering on having to shut down the labs because we were getting in excess of 30 degrees, close to 35 in some labs, and that's sort of about the sort of temperature level where people become stressed, heat stressed, and really, you know, we might have had to tell people to go home.
But presumably the air phone's not
We're
working.
not quite there yet, but.
The fume hoods aren't working either.
No, the fume cupboards are a separate entity.
Oh, okay.
Any other services. And in a way, that's an example where your own experience, intuition should actually govern. You know, you're going to say, hey, this is something new. I'm going to now decide.
It's a good idea to work in the lab.
Yeah.
To give you a couple of examples of things that I've been aware of since I've been here, we've had somebody who was asked to get a chemical, who was basically then, because the supervisor went overseas, was not being supervised quite as well as they possibly should have been. came up with a plan to how to make this how to use this chemical to do her experimentation. The chemical was highly toxic and highly flammable, but her plan was that she was going to put it in a beaker, put it in the fume cupboard, and put her sample on the top of it, and then let it run, and just let her sample be exposed to it. The trouble was the cupboard that she pointed to was actually a HEPA cupboard rather than a fume cupboard.
Oh no.
Okay, so that's one. So the students didn't know what the difference between what happens with the laminar flow cupboard and what happens with the fume cupboard. Another one happened yesterday where I had a young lady who was working on a piece of machinery. And I don't mean to be, I've just realised I've actually picked on two ladies, but it's the guys as well. It's everybody, but I just thought what happened to me yesterday.
Come on, name one guy.
This person, sorry.
Name one guy.
This person had a beautiful cabinet that had been set up to deal with high voltage to protect her from high voltage. And them from high voltage, then noticed that they had bypassed the safety mechanism which cuts off the high voltage, and was sticking a stick in to clean the syringe tip. And
What
it's
does
like,
that mean? What does that mean?
well, what it was they were running 250 volts.
Oh.
And they had an electrode on one side which was a needle, and they were blowing samples across to another electrode which was collecting material that was shooting across from one to the other.
So the thing was plugged in.
But the thing was plugged in, and so it was pumping out voltage, but it was pumping out a resin. And the resin was blocking the needle all the time, so they had lifted the lid slightly, put a block in so that they could get a stick in and wipe the end of the needle so it would allow the fibres to go across. And it's like,
On the fly.
yeah, that's not sort of what
Yeah.
the idea is. You need to be aware
That's
of
probably
those
the
sort of
situation
things.
where the students really in the
Mm.
they're in the left hand,
Yeah.
operating the left hand
Yeah, not observing
quadrant, but they
the-
actually
yeah.
should, but they're trying to operate
On the
as
right,
if they
yes,
are on
yes,
the right. And
yes,
really they're not really
yes.
ready for that.
Yes, yes.
But it's just, I remember there was a similar incident when I was doing my PhD with UV Vis, where a student, normally they're meant to shut off if you lift the lid, they have a safety switch,
Yeah.
and they actually take the switch
Oh,
so
yes.
that
Yep.
you wouldn't, so and then lifted it up whilst demonstrating it,
Yep.
which I remember that, which.
It's not just this industry. I mean, you guys here. It's everywhere. Industry as well. We've watched a guy who was who was doing running a canning line. So you basically put a big can of milk powder in. They have a machine comes down, presses the lid on, and winds the lid on, seals everything up. 2 buttons to make sure his fingers were out of the way.
Yeah.
So he has 2 buttons, he puts his can on, he puts the lid on, he puts the 2 buttons like this so his hands are out of the way. He decided that he didn't need to, he needed to get the job done faster, so he taped up one of the switches so he could do 2, he could push a button with one hand and get the other hand underneath it. And it's like, if he had his hand caught in the thing, he would have lost his hand completely. But they don't think about it, they're so focused on trying to get the work done. So it's, yeah. And these guys know health and safety. They know that they're supposed to do these things, but everybody gets a little bit focused on trying to get the work done rather than making sure you get the work done and get home safely.
Yeah.
It's interesting how having a mythology of incidents actually probably keeps people more vulnerable.
There's an
Balls of
Instagram
disease.
account called Health and Safety, which has some pretty fucking horrific videos that
Oh, really?
that I
Really?
followed. Oh, it has really, it has general things for around, workplace and unsafe practices, but they've got some industrial ones as well, where some of them are like R18, you can't, they're really nasty. But there's some that are, that are really useful in near misses and things.
Yeah.
How do we share that sort of stuff
Yeah.
with people? We need to do more in our department meetings with academics, but also with students. How do we get the message out to students to help them to learn and everyone to learn?
I think that maybe when we have our near misses, we should basically treat them like a learning experience.
Yeah, we should.
Rather than saying, okay, this is this person and they've done this wrong, we should say a member of staff. We don't even have to specify it's a staff member or a student or a member of this department has managed, we've learned something from this type of thing, and everybody should be known about it because
I
And it's
don't
not
think
We're trying to do that. We've done that in a very ad hoc way and not sufficiently well so far.
I don't think we should work the incidents though. I think it's good to use, like, I really like the use of incidents from other places as well. 'Cause
Yeah.
otherwise you're waiting for an incident to happen and going, come on, we need to remind everybody.
Yeah.
We can do that as
Stick
well.
your finger in here.
Yeah, it's just.
But we can do that as well, but we have to bring it back to
Technology.
within the department, then all of a sudden, hang on a second, it's not happening out to the outside world, it's happening
Yeah.
here at the
Yeah,
same time.
but if there's nothing that's happened and, you know, if it's presented on a regular basis, it's not to say that you should become complacent.
I think one of the
80 fourth year students, I'm sure we'll be able to come up
well,
with a couple this year.
hopefully doesn't. But the thing about these two incidences is that it could happen
Yeah, it could
anywhere,
happen, yeah.
and it's almost unpreventable. Like the ventilation not working.
Yeah.
You know, you almost assume, hey, it should be working.
Yeah.
Just like, okay, like the aircon situation. Let's say there's a spill and we forgot about, hey, the aircon is not working.
Yeah.
There could have been a mild, maybe not death, but
Yeah.
because one thing is our liquid nitrogen is not kept in these. One of the flaws was it was kept in a closed room.
That's right. Yeah.
So ours is not, but it could have been
Yeah.
some other chemical that.
Yeah.
Well, even the,
Yeah.
there was a liquid nitrogen
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
hospital just down the road.
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 That was
Yeah.
closed,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. They found it necessary.
Yeah,
to-
so, you know, if you've been in that location, yeah, it could be an issue. Yeah.
The reality, I actually found out about that, the reality was that it was an overpressure valve
From one of the liquid nitrogen.
from the liquid nitrogen
Yeah.
over there, basically had basically blocked, so the pressure, the nitrogen built up within one of the rooms. The room is designed to then open louvers, which basically releases all that gas out. But because of the air conditions at that time, it was quite humid, it was quite warm, and then when you opened up the thing and you get all this liquid nitrogen, all this nitrogen come out, it basically condensed all the moisture in the air. So what you had was this puddle of condensed air, moisture basically looking across, and it looked like liquid nitrogen sitting in that area. So, but because they see this smoke coming out from the liquid nitrogen room, big panic and call
Well,
out
But
probably
so
everything else.
yeah, I thought if you've got a car park there, you
Yeah.
you wouldn't have much rubber left or
Yeah, pretty much.
the
Yeah,
tires,
but
would
it's
you?
in there, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's that sort of thing. It's not even things that you think about.
Mm.
Yeah, it's.
But I wonder if for some things, like, we have students draw up HAZOPs for particular things, there's particular pieces of equipment, say
Yeah.
like sieves, which say are fairly basic.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, they have mechanical things, so always specify tying your gear back and things like that as well. But they're kind of passed on from student to student.
Yep.
Because if there's things that build up from that, you want that to be passed on as opposed to each student having to create a new methodology, a new HAZOP for something, and so then the experience doesn't get captured or
Yeah.
passed on, and things don't get added.
Yeah, there's an argument against that too, because there's also, I mean, if you just recipe wrote filling, taking something and not really reading it and copying it, it's sort of, you know, you're not internalizing it
But I
and
guess
really
for me,
thinking about it.
it's
But
the
would it-
student, you know, the supervisor's role to go through with, you know, through
Oh,
with
yeah,
them and
yeah.
go, these are the hazards that you have to be aware of.
But would it be better, from my point of view, it would be better because the students are going to go out in industry. Whether we like it or not, they're going to leave us, they're going to go into industry, and in most cases in New Zealand, they're going to be the health and safety person for the company they're going to go to, because they're all quite small companies in New Zealand. So it'd be good for them to actually learn that. But if we had a resource where we actually had all the equipment set up, and we had it there and available, so if you sent somebody up to see the GC, I would have all the hazards for the GC and how to run the GC, and then you could look at it and you could go, okay, Peter's shown you how to do it, what are the hazards, and you go
and I
like
can
this.
ask them,
And you can
what
look at that and you go,
happens.
actually,
Yeah,
yeah,
you
you
can
these
just
two,
do
these
it
ones you
and
need to think
actually-
about this, you haven't thought about these two, and then you can add it to the list, and then they can go away and come back.
Yeah.
Would be possibly a better way of doing it, because they're having to
Then they
think
have the
about it
training,
themselves.
but
Yeah.
Actually, maybe what we should be doing with graduate students too is in their inductions, actually, I mean, usually we get people, you know, students to develop their own HAZOPs and SOPs for their experiments. Maybe we should actually have a general experiment that we get everyone to develop a HAZOP or SOP on, you know,
Yep,
something that
practical
involves high
something.
pressure, temperature, chemicals, mechanical,
that's
and biological, and have use that as a training case study
I
as part
think
of our
that would be really
our
good.
training.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of an online thing though, so you could have that as like a Canvas
And then-
quiz or something.
Yeah,
that's
like
right.
to do.
So it doesn't have to be a
Add
3
either
day,
into
3 days
Step 1 or
online,
have-
but it's
have
a
new
specific
mod-
case study.
Canvas course that's health and safety.
Mm.
I mean, how much work would it be to make it like a Canvas course that is health and safety? So you share it, so we can reuse it every year and share it with fourth years.
Can I also sort of make a suggestion that we don't have a standard set of test questions? We have the questions, but we don't. You arrange it so that they're all there in different sequence or to ask different ways.
You can do randomised, have a
randomised,
repository.
And maybe what we should do is have staff do it periodically as well to get refreshed.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, I was going to say,
increase the bank of questions.
Yeah, yeah.
could we not get the staff to do it just basically so that we can ensure that we get all the hazards?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That would be the ideal
That's
thing.
a good idea. We
Nobody's
have
going
a
to get it
benchmark.
perfect, so if everybody has a look at it, and then also we need to think about this, we need to think about that, then that would be the best way of doing it for us.
And we can put on our like really macabre hats and think of all the terrible things, right? Yeah. No, that sounds really good. There's the other thing, web resource. We have the safety first page, right? And I don't know who's maintaining that, but I feel like we could add a lot more content.
Please.
And like maybe we need
Access to it.
Yeah, I've tried getting access to our department pages and like it's like walking around, you know, the campus 5 times. I don't know how to do this. Maybe we need to
So,
hire
yeah,
someone.
Ginny in communications,
Yeah.
she'll update the page if we ask her, so ask her nicely. So, yeah, so.
So we just need to
Should be
send
able
her
to-
content.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I mean, probably go through at the stages, so it usually comes through me or through the safety committee, essentially. We ask her to put her on there, so we can get that done
So we can
very
do that.
easily. Yeah.
Okay, that'd be cool. And then we could have, I mean, my vision here, and I talked to Peter Buchanan a bit about this and got some pushback. But I'd like to see video procedures for safe usage of instruments. Not to replace proper training, but to supplement it. So like,
I think that would be good. Yeah.
yeah.
Because then you see it and then you get demonstrated in real life as well. So then you're familiar already a little bit before you even come to getting the actual in-person
Yeah.
training.
Yeah. Yeah.
The issue that we always find is that although we tell them there are certain things to read and they need to be
Yeah,
prepared
they
for
don't read
it, they
it.
don't.
Yeah.
They
But I
can be
guess that's where-
overloaded or.
But I guess that's where, you know, just asking a few questions and going, right, you can't answer 2/3 of those questions, you know, come
Go
see
away.
me once, yeah, go away, come back.
Yeah.
So that's really more of a.
So yeah, from students, you need to have some student
Yeah.
participation.
Oh, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, so some while ago, I'm really get some online courses using the edX website or Coursera, and some while ago I found a very interesting course about the safety, which was actually like a game. I showed that one to Peter, and it was a game for 3 different laboratory for the biological, chemical, and the other one I can't remember now, analytical, something like this. And then the students were actually, they were OLED, and the supervisor or technician was a wise owl. So and it was like a game. You should pass some stages, and then every time if you do it wrong, then the wise owl came and said, okay, no, this is wrong. You should do this, this, this. It was a very basic game, but very beautiful one. I really like it, and I could finish it just less than like 1 hour, something like this. And it's free.
Easy to learn
Yeah.
in that kind of.
Yeah, and
thing.
some of them
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
and some of parts actually was very interesting. Before that, I've seen that video in the YouTube about the one of the staff, the lecturer in I don't know which university. She passed away because she used unsuitable gloves while using some chemicals. And from that time, I was okay, how about our gloves? And then I came in a couple of times, asked Peter, what's the difference between the latex one and neutral? Can you explain? And this was completely explained in that game. And it was very interesting, yeah. The whole game is about some zombie coming to the campus, and they are attacking the students, which are all dead. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, but that one is free, or we can put it, I don't know, maybe in the website or anywhere, and ask a student to finish it because it's just funny. But at least if any student can learn just 1 point from that one, it can be helpful.
Yeah, it's still, yeah, the video thing is quite nice,
Yeah.
and then you can have a link for which lab you're using and which equipment. So you don't have to look at all of them, but if you want to,
Yeah.
use a particular.
You do realise that that would be quite a large job. We have a
It's
very
huge.
large
Yes.
amount of
Yes.
equipment.
Yes.
But there's like particular
Yes.
pieces of equipment that I'd be happy
Yes.
to do for the bits that I train people,
Yep.
even
Yeah.
things like the
It-
master size.
Oh, no, yeah, not tonight, but it does well. Yeah, next week.
Nothing else to say.
Peter, there's a long weekend coming up.
Oh, yeah, I've done it for the weekend, that's good. Yes. So I'm not allowed to work alone, Ashvin. You joining me?
I'll be here.
The ventilation will be on, don't
Yeah,
worry.
it'll be good, yeah.
But it is a piecewise thing that has
Yeah.
to be done
Yeah.
by the different groups and the different,
Originally, I had
And
the
it's a
idea
commitment,
that,
yeah.
I originally had the idea that if I was teaching equipment, I would provide them with a set of instructions on how to use the equipment and the safety things
Yeah.
that you needed
Yeah.
to do for that.
Yeah.
And they would have to bring the hazards that they were bringing to the situation.
Yes.
So for using the GCMAT spec,
Yeah.
the example I have always used is Noor Hamiza basically uses it for coffee. So the instructions I give her to use the HPLC, GCMAT spec for coffee is you have to do these certain things, you've got to be careful of these sorts of things. What are you bringing? She says, I'm bringing food. Not a problem. So she has to do that. The guy over at Department of Defence and Navy Base, if he brings his explosive samples over to use my GCMAT spec, he's going to have a whole different set of protocols to go through to make sure he's safe. But he still gets the same protocols that I give him. So we can possibly do that, put that online and explain those sorts of things. That would be that's the sort of thing that you need to possibly we can do.
And that would also put our equipment on the World Wide Web so that we could perhaps attract more collaborations, industrial support.
Yeah.
And you also know what's
Timing.
within the department as
Yeah,
well.
no kidding, there we go.
It's like, I'm just going to take a stroll to the labs. What's this? That.
Possibly the other thing is that some of the equipment that we use for very different purposes.
Yeah.
So for things like the fluid bed unit, that is the fluid bed unit you guys use for milk powders. Mm-hmm.
Really?
Sorry,
We have a fluidized bed?
there's a fluid, we have a fluidized bed, but I was actually thinking the spray dryer, sorry.
Oh.
The spray dryer we use for milk powder,
Yeah.
but there's also another one
Another
down the
one
far
that's
end
for
for
ceramics
ceramics.
and things,
So
yeah,
how they
that's
use them is
balance.
in different ways might be, we might have to
Yeah.
think about that sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
Pulse electric field, you use it for killing bacteria for a particular time, another time you might be using it for extracting materials.
Yeah.
So if we change the way we're going to use it, we have to think about what the implications are,
Yeah.
that sort of way.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be some mechanism to transfer student knowledge though, because we tend to treat the student knowledge as if it's all wrong, and that you can't possibly transfer knowledge from student A to student B because everything will get just buggered up in the processing. But that's not true. I mean, the student who's using the equipment often might have missed some of the safety considerations that the next person will need to know.
Yeah.
But they also probably have a lot of knowledge that they can share, and I just don't feel like we respect that as a department. We don't respect the students' knowledge of the equipment, and I don't know how to change that.
That's all right. And it's interesting that the knowledge, you can pass on the knowledge as is, and then there's also the process of someone developing their own knowledge, which is also part of the learning process.
Yeah.
So it's like the fish and learning how to fish. So I think someone coming up with their
Confused
own.
about that.
You-
Fish and learning how to fish.
You're talking about being
Fishing.
fed a meal of
Fishing.
fish or
Give-
teaching someone
How to fish.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's common sense.
That's common sense. Do you give someone a fish or do you teach them how to fish?
It depends. Do you want to make money out of it?
That's true. But I think so. There's benefits for people to come up with that, like the HAZOPs that people are doing, rather than just saying, hey, this student did this last year, which is really good. Why don't you have a look at it and
Yeah.
as opposed to really thinking about what needs to go in there. So it is one of the learning outcomes, I guess, for students or even any researcher who's using a facility to sort of go through their own process themselves.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I wonder if one of those things is that at the end of their experiments, if they should update their HAZOPs and you know,
The
procedures
before and-
after,
yeah,
so you have
yeah.
a before and then you've got an after
Yeah.
review.
Yeah.
Since then they've used it extensively and then they've got a better idea of,
One of the things about the video thing is that it doesn't necessarily have to be so complicated. It can be, it's about the general philosophy of a particular piece of equipment. And of course, if different types of specimens are being used, that's specific.
Yeah.
General dangers. And also to measure the risk that is involved. Like, for example, if it is losing an arm as opposed to death,
Yeah.
I mean, both are bad, but, you know, just to see what's included in the message in a video that's supposed to be a starting point.
Yeah, I suppose that's right. Actually, and it's not really lab safety, but my daughter was doing a defensive driving course, and her instructor was talking about a situation where they were involved in where a bunch of kids ran out in front of him as he was driving along, and he had the choice of either he couldn't stop, but he could turn the wheel. He had a choice of either taking out 6 kids and went straight ahead, or turning the wheel and taking out 2 adults that hadn't actually that were with the kids and weren't able to restrain them. So it's a hell of a choice, but we kind of have to be defensive operators in some ways sometimes. So it's an interesting thing to consider.
Well, they do it, I think, as an ethics example, don't they? Something who I was talking to about that regarding the type of ethics that there are. If you've got a cart rolling down the hill or whatever, and the
Trolley
choices.
problem,
The trolley problem. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the trolley problem. Yeah.
What's the choice?
There's different choices for different. What you pick depends on kind of your background ethics. I think that's how it works. That you decide kind of your choices decide what your core beliefs essentially in ethics are. It's always kind of explores your ethical beliefs.
Women and children in the lifeboats.
Sorry?
Women and children in the lifeboats. Yeah, that kind of
Did you just assume what was it? It'll be that. Did you just assume my gender?
Yeah, because then it would be called a near miss.
Oh God. All right. Well, should we wrap it up?
Sounds
there,
good.
or is there any more comments? Students? Any other students?
I just needed to add this. Health and safety is something that should be continuous. That's something that you learn from the first day, and that's it, you live it. It should be updated with new things, and even learn the others, the new students that come up to you. Okay, I've tried this, don't try this.
Don't try this at home.
Yeah, and for the possible experiences, possible backgrounds that they might have, to pass it on to others, and to learn what will go forward. Yeah, that might be good.
What's the status of our PICs? Our student PICs? There's a training class this month? How many?
Yeah, I don't know.
Do we have any qualified student PICs at this point?
I don't think so.
Yes, civil, because she was previously in civil environment. In civil environment they have.
They have to.
And you've been one of them? Or?
No.
Senior student. Senior student, yeah. But but in general, civil environment, because I'm sometimes working in their lab, they are really organizing for the safety. Yeah. They have lots of things. I can remember they had like some quizzes randomly in the online website. You should answer to all of them, and then to get like yeah.
So for doctors and lawyers, they have this thing called continuing education. So every year they need to collect points to be valid. If not, they don't get to practice.
Yes, CPD.
CPD.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, engineers, if you're a professional engineer, you have the same
Yeah.
requirements.
The same
That's
thing.
right. That's right. You're a
Yeah.
professional. maybe that's something to think about as sort of continuing education for both staff and postgraduate students who have to be here for more than 1 year.
I think it would be a great idea.
I'll ask, I mean, Yangtao sits on our, from Environmental sits on our safety committee, so I'll ask her about that if I remember. I have been drinking. The next safety committee meeting in a few weeks' time, But, yeah, we can learn from that.
Yeah. For some of the devices we have, for XRD, for example, because it's dangerous, we have this type of quiz. We should pass this quiz, then we can
that's
use
right.
XRD. Yeah. But not for the general total labs.
No, that's true.
I think also when I visit some other university, I think each lab either on the door or on the wall, they have some very clear signage, chemical or whatever thing. But we don't have this here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I thought we do door signage, no?
No, we don't have.
No, we don't.
We don't have anything.
Not uniformly.
You do have sometimes.
Yeah, we don't have something. We don't have something. That's sort of quite clear, So
What the
say-
dangers are?
Yeah, what the dangers are.
Oh, I see, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very clear. When you come in, or even before you come in,
Yeah.
you saw the sign, either chemical or high voltage,
Oh, I
electricity,
see,
or
like
something
high
like that,
voltage.
or explosive, or X-ray, or whatever. Yeah.
We do have safety glasses and that, of course.
No, that does not identify the head.
I think we should have also possibly a sign when people exit the lab and say, please take at least one glove off and not go.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a pet hate of mine, is seeing people walking around with 2 gloves, and you do realize you're spreading it everywhere, and you stop and go take one off. But I think I don't know, that would be it.
So if we do online resources though, what do you think it should be on the open website or more on like a Canvas page?
It should be a link on that safety
Do you
website.
think it would be right?
Yeah.
I think it should be open link rather than Canvas. I think Canvas is inside.
It's quite,
Like what if you want to add quizzes and, I don't know, have it as something that you refer like part 4 students that they have to do this module or whatever.
You can set up a Canvas class, and anybody who's allowed to use the labs have to be enrolled in it. And that's a way of keeping tabs on it as well.
Oh,
Then you
that's
can
a
put
good
in
idea.
information
And you can keep like equipment user registrars and laboratory user registrations. Because I think it would be nice to have a list of every user of a lab for cleanup time.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Send a mass email like, all right, this lab is a tip. Let's get it done. Yeah, that sounds really good.
So probably a safety committee needs to recruit someone who's going to be an online
Safety champion.
specialist.
Yeah, that's right.
Certainly.
There's lots of time.
Who has lots of time?
Yeah, certainly online quiz type of thing to help, like academic integrity. Another one, every student has to pass. Of course, you can try many times.
Yeah.
So if you fail, fine. You can try again. So
Like the driving test, huh?
yeah.
Theoretical test. You keep doing it until you pass.
Yeah. Give it a say, this is free.
Okay, on the test. The answer number 7 is B. That's where you got to randomise the questions, right?
Or does it do it in the spirit of, Rob's multiple choice quizzes where, if you get the wrong answer, you get marks deducted.
Yeah.
And you have to, for every mark correct, you get a correct answer. And multiple choice can have more than one correct answer, so you don't know the total number of points. I like that.
That's vicious.
So you can shuffle your question, you can shuffle
Yeah, you can
the
shuffle all
answer.
of those things, yeah. Yep.
So memorize B is not enough.
No. Yeah. And you can pull questions from the whole staff and student body. You don't have to get just one person to come up with them.
Do you still have any content from, was it Imperial that you said you did it, or I mean, are things like that accessible externally so that we could get information from someone else like that? I mean, I think this game sounds good
Yeah,
though, so that
yeah.
could be a starting
Yeah.
point, or
Yeah.
even just have that as a link that
Yeah.
people have to.
Yeah.
Even the point that you mentioned about the gloves, I mean, yeah, there's there. I mean, when the OLED came with 2 gloves, and no, it's wrong.
Yeah.
They're just one
Tell them
glove.
off. I tell them off. I'm like, please take one glove off because you're
Yeah.
touching everything, and whatever the hell
Exactly.
you're protecting yourself from, you're spreading to everybody else.
Yeah.
You're like, right, so you're not going to get Ebola, but the rest of us are.
So when you, like, is there a finish to that game? And then is there something that you get? Or could you
No,
take a
actually, you can
screenshot
buy
to-
the certificate for $50.
Oh.
But if you don't pay, you can just participate for free.
Yeah.
But you don't get anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
I was thinking whether, yeah, we could get proof that the students had done it or something.
Ah,
They
yeah.
could take a screenshot with the time.
Yeah, you can. They can.
And then
With
they
the
have to
latest
show that they've
newspaper.
completed it.
Let's use paper beside it.
And a small kid.
Yeah, because at the end there is a quiz. Actually, at the end of the game, there's a quiz. You should answer all these quizzes. At least they can take a photo of the final mark in the quiz. It shows that they passed or not. Yeah.
So can you send me?
Yeah,
the
sure.
link
Yeah,
there?
yeah, sure.
I think creating a bank of questions based on common sense would be good.
Yeah.
All our common knowledge, just dump it in there. Whether we use the questions is not, but it's information that we can mine to create these quizzes.
Can we like have?
And that's not difficult to do.
At the next department meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Because otherwise, like, we go off and then we forget, right?
Yeah.
But, like, if we actually just all sit down together,
Yeah, that's a good
we
idea.
each write.
I could create a Google form.
Yeah.
I don't know
submit
how to
when
use
it-
Google Forms.
No, you just have to key in a question and an
That's
answer,
easy.
Yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah.
Anything you can think of. If you don't have anything, don't make up something.
Yeah.
It can be
Oh, so-
rubbish because you
yeah.
can always sieve it up. You can send it to anybody, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I used Google Forms for the fourth years this year.
Oh, right, yeah,
because
yeah.
following its lead actually.
Yeah,
I never
yeah.
used them beforehand.
Yeah.
Very
It's
easy.
so convenient.
Yeah, but I got my wife and kids to actually answer the questions first to make sure that they actually.
Oh, check it.
So I'm now doing fun projects this year too. So. They didn't choose me though. It's a little
Did you check under dad?
Yeah. There wasn't that code. Yeah. That's good.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so, all right.
Great. Thanks for a stimulating discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happy Auckland University Day.
Yes.
Should I? Yeah. Okay. How should I turn?
Oh, you just